Whenever I interacted with Kainé, I was reminded about something from my past. Maybe my mind has been confusing her with my sister this whole time. Anyway...
Fourth time's the charm. I'll read through it this time, so I actually read it a bit better than I did the first time. Kainé's dream, discrimination. The sound of rain falling filled the village. Already messed up. The steep cliffs that surrounded the area magnified the sound, causing even the slightest drizzle to rattle like a thunderstorm. The wisps of smoke streamed from the huts as the villagers huddled in their homes and waited out the rain. A single child, however, braved the downpour, and was now wandering slowly towards the wooden hawk-shaped weather vane at the centre of the town. The wanderer reached the vane, which had existed for as long as anyone could remember, and stared. The child's face was simultaneously delicate and fierce, like a teacup that had survived a shipwreck. Those traits combined with the pale white skin to give the face an almost sexless quality. If the beak turns east, I go home. If it stays west, I... The child blinked. The rain slowly dripped down the young one short hair and began its long descent to the ground. Come on, come on. The child felt a slight breeze and watched as the vane slowly creaked to life. Spinning this way and that for a moment, it finally settled with the beaked paw pointed towards the east. East. Really? Before the vane could move again, a jagged rock came spinning and trembled through the air, striking home against the child's head. The force of the blow dropped the child to the ground as a hail of stones began to fall all around. Oh no, they found me. A heartbreaking smile crept across the child's face as the stones continued their assault. Though through the rain, the sounds of multiple footsteps grew louder before a voice rang out. Yo, Kainé! The voice belonged to Demo, worst of the bullies in Aerie. As Kainé struggled to stand, a final stone came skittering through the mud and bounced against her foot. Blood oozed from the cut above her eye and blurred her vision, but she could make out the shape of Demo and his usual gang of idiots. The boy seemed taken aback for a moment by Kainé, seeming indifferent to the blood dripping down her face, but quickly regained his bravado. What's up, freak? You like the rain? You like getting all wet? Or did you finally decide to run away from home? Though she knew it was futile, Kainé turned to leave. Before she could take more than a few steps, the other children scrambled to surround her, cruelty burning in their eyes. Kainé knew these were not the only eyes on her. The tormentors' parents watched from safety of their homes. She was attuned to this sensation. It was one that she had experienced many times before. While some villagers simply turned a blind eye to the actions of the children, many encouraged them openly. In a society ruled by superstition and fear, Kainé was something to be hated and possibly destroyed. I didn't say you could leave, freak. Demos chewed the words at her like a worm through an apple. He can't hurt me, she lied to herself. Be strong, be brave. He can't hurt me, he can't hurt me, he can't hurt. Oh look, the little freak's gonna cry. What's wrong? Are you sad that everyone hates you and wants you dead? Kainé prayed for the rain to flood down and carry her away from the world that seemed to have no place for her. But if there were gods, they chose to ignore her. As Demo crept closer, the clouds began to thin and the rain slowed. Even the weather hates me. I'm useless, a failure. I wish Demo's rock had taken my head off. Kainé couldn't meet Dino's leering gaze. She lowered her eyes and stared at the muddy ground below. The bully moved forward until he was an inch away. She could smell the scent of old meat on his breath. The boy grabbed Kainé's face with a thick finger and yanked it upwards. She tried to turn away, but he forced her gaze back and jammed his thumb against her eyelids to pry it open. "Show me!" "No." "Did you say no?" Demo grinned evilly. "You don't say no to me. No one says no to me." Not even taking his attention from Kainé, he called his cohorts. "Come on guys, let's give this freak what she deserves." As soon as Demo finished the kicks and blows that rained down on Kainé, Demo paused, still grinning at Kainé, curled in a ball, and tried to make the pain stop. "Don't you get it, freak? What, you're acting like a girl for her? Everyone knows what you really are." Kainé ignored the question, choosing instead to stare at the weather vane. It continued to point east, as if supremely confident about the future it had chosen for her. Go home. Yeah, that's a funny joke for someone with dead parents and no home to go to. "Freak!" chanted the children. "Freak! Freak! Freak!" Kainé closed her eyes and listened to the rain, waiting for the pain to start again. As she clutched hands of the village children closed around her, she bent her mind to the sound of the rain, letting it become her world entire. The rain fall, but the pain never came. Only when the laughter of her tormentor turned to terrified cries did she dare open a single blood-caked eye. Kainé was shocked to see Demo scrawled across the down, holding his head and screaming in pain. She could see blood welling from the space between his fat, twisted fingers. "Oh my god, he's crying. He's actually crying." Deprived of their leader, the other children glanced back and forth between themselves, as if waiting for someone to step forward and take charge. When no saviour emerged, they began to uneasily shuffle away from Kainé. But the young girl was the least of their concerns. Instead, their attention was wrapped on the ancient woman standing a few feet away. After struggling for breath for a moment, she finally spoke in a voice thick with rage. "Hurts like a bitch, didn't it? Now, I suggest you scatter before I throw another one. And if any of you little bastards ever touch Kainé again, I'll do far worse than throw a rock, you count on it." The old woman crouched down and gently touched her hand to Demo was using to cover the wound. Before he could think to protest, she ground her palm in the wound and twisted back and forth. "Ow!" he screamed, leaping to his feet. "Stop it! What you doing?" "Quit whining. Ain't nobody ever died from a scratch." "You hit me with a rock, you stupid bitch! A big one! That thing could have killed me!" The old woman shrugged. "Death is the best cure for stupid." Demo's face twisted with rage at her words. Locking eyes with Kainé's, he took a step back and spat on the ground. "Get out! Leave this village! No one wants you here, either of you!" Seeing the old woman grab another stone, Demo and his companions turned tail and ran. As they fled, the old woman grabbed her side and barked out a single laugh. "Ha! Look at that fat boy go! Guess he's healthy enough to run from a fight." The old woman's smile faded as she turned her attention to Kainé. Kneeling down, she removed her shawl and placed it around the young girl's shoulder, then produced a cloth from the folds of her dress and began blotting the blood from her forehead. "Oh, Kainé," she said, "why didn't you fight back? You're stronger than that lot." The words of her grandmother stung Kainé, and she turned away. "Don't be nice to me," she said. "I don't deserve it. Nothing matters anymore." Her tears, held in check so long, finally began to fall to the muddy ground below. "Everyone hates me. They think I cause bad things to happen. They think I'm a freak. I wish I was dead." As Kainé's tears turned to sobs, she felt her grandmother's hands on her shoulder. Despite her advanced age and diminished size, she was a woman of surprising strength, and Kainé found herself unable to turn away. "Don't talk like that, girl. It's a river wide and deep that flows between the realms of the world and the next. It grants no mercy to any that attempt the crossing. You got a duty to fight until your last breath. Understand? The old woman tightened her grip and tried to still the tremor in her voice. You know the pain of loss, someone close to you, Kainé. You know this because you survived it. As the words hit home, Kainé was struck by the force of her love of the old woman. As a young child, she didn't even know of her grandmother, but when her parents died, the woman quickly accepted her as her own. Grandma, as Kainé calls her, was cunning, vulgar, and quick to violence, and their first few years together had not been easy. But with each year that passed, Kainé and her grandmother grew closer. However, it was only now, sitting in the mud with tears and blood cake in her face, that Kainé truly understood the depths of her affection. Here was a woman who had seen hard times, who had seen death, who had fought through all of things, and somehow emerged on the other side. If anyone could understand Kainé's pain and loneliness, it was her. Do I make you sick, Grandma? Course not. Don't be an arse. Kainé drew her grandmother's moth-eaten shawl around her body and shuddered. But my body... it's not normal. If I was normal, Mum and Dad wouldn't... Hush, interrupted Grandma. Yeah, I'm not hearing any another word of nonsense. You're my granddaughter, and I love you, and if the folks have a problem with that, then they can just go to hell. With that, the old woman reached out and placed a wreath of dried flowers in Kainé's hair. The skill it took to bend the flowers without breaking the stem or losing a single petal was remarkable, and the beauty of it made Kainé want to cry all over again. Oh my gosh, these are lunar tears. Grandma, you made this for me? Lunar tears were legendary flowers. Most people could live their entire life without ever seeing one, and yet her grandma had somehow managed to collect a dozen or more. Kainé reached up and touched the wreath, as if she couldn't believe it was real. Where did you find these? I just stumbled upon them while I was out shopping. The woman turned away as she spoke, leading Kainé to suspect that the search had been a lot more difficult than she was letting on. The pain it took to construct the ornament, let alone track down the flowers used in its construction, made Kainé's heart hurt. She reached up and gently touched the wreath, admiring the way it felt between her fingers. Didn't quite turn out right, said her grandmother as she squinted at it. Those old hands had trouble doing delicate work, but it sure looks good on a pretty girl like you. Kainé blushed and turned away. You think I'm pretty? Course you are. What foolish things to say. Thank you, Grandma. Her grandma smiled. We're gonna be fine, you and me, she said. Long as we got each other, we'll be fine. Kainé took her grandma's hand in hers, and the two of them struggled to their feet. As they began their long walk home, Kainé gripped the hand with all her might, as if trying to stop the smoke from drifting away in the wind. The rain had stopped. Kainé stood beneath the weatherway, watching it spin in circles, no longer caring which direction it faced when it stopped. I don't need to escape. I have a home now. Grandma loves me, and that's enough. Even if it's us against the world. Kainé let her gaze drift upwards to the vein in the cloudy sky. The last faint hints of a rainbow were slowly fading. As she turned and headed home, the light scattered into a million particles and vanished, seemingly taken away on the breeze. Kainé's dream, daily life. In the distance, Kainé heard a steady sound of axe striking wood. The noise had purpose quality to it, as if she was hearing a master woodsmith at work. The firewood had been produced, however, was as far as work of art as it could be. The pieces everywhere every shape and size were being flung about the barnyard with wild abandon. Anyone trying to stack such wood would probably die of frustration before the job was through. Stupid piece of shit axe! Kainé's grandmother flailed away with the axe, filling the air with both splinters of wood and words that would make even the most hardened sailor blush. Grandma, called Kainé. That you, Kainé? Yelled the old woman, taking her eye off the wood for a moment. Don't you get too close, or I might take your goddamn foot off by mistake. She brought the axe down on the piece of wood, sending chips flying in every direction. One spun past Kainé, close enough for her to hear the whistle, at which point she decided to take a step back. Once she scuttled to a safe distance, she cupped her hands around her mouth and shouted, "Grandma! Do you need help? I can get water, lunch, or a new axe or something?" The axe paused to strike another wobbly blow. Paused in midair. The old woman considered her granddaughter's offer for a moment, then smiled. "Tell you what, since I'm doing such a piss-poor job of chopping, why don't you come here and take over, so I can get water? Shades have been restless lately, and I don't want you running into one of them bastards." Relinquishing the axe from her grandmother picked up the long pole with the wood buckets on either end. Gathering water was far more difficult of the two jobs, but Kainé knew better than to complain. Once her grandmother's mind was set, there was no changing it. Kainé did her best to help with the chores, but Grandma took every task that required travel into the village. Though she had a long list of plausible excuses, Kainé knew the real reason. She didn't want her grandma to be taunted and harassed by the villagers. Once Kainé moved in, Grandmother decided to take residence in a good distance from the area. Out of sight, out of mind seemed to be the best policy when it came to the villagers and her daughter, and rare were the days when any but the two of them could be found on the rocky area of land that they called home. Kainé enjoyed the solitude, but harboured a secret resentment that her grandmother was forced to spend her golden years in such a place. After watching her grandmother leave, Kainé turned her attention to the task at hand. She had never chopped wood before in her life, and soon discovered why the old woman hated the chore. Swing after swing of the axe produced only the thinnest cracks in the wood, and when she finally managed to connect with a solid stroke, the tool embedded itself in the log and refused to budge. Frustrated, Kainé swung the axe around her head and threw the log all the way across the yard. Damn it, oh crap! She suddenly understood the joy Grandmother felt in a good curse. Happier now, she picked up the axe and forced it into the wood with a resumed chopping. She had a natural skill with a blade, but the task was challenging, and blisters soon began to form on her small pink hands. "This is tough, and my logs are all weird sizes." Spitting on her palms and ignoring the pain, Kainé redoubled her efforts. Just as she was developing a rhythm, her grandmother returned from the village. Setting down her bucket with a small sigh, she took one long look at the logs and coughed out a wheezy laugh. "Pretty clumsy, girl. You better practice if you..." Her grandmother suddenly collapsed to her knees, causing one of the buckets to wobble precariously. Eyes wide, Kainé dropped the axe and ran to her grandmother's side. "Grandma!" The old woman shook her head and pointed a trembling finger at the bucket. "Get the bucket! Can't let it spill!" Kainé steadied the bucket with her foot as she knelt by her grandmother. A small bit of water sloshed from side to side, making a new home in the hem of her dress, but Kainé didn't notice. Grandma, what's happening?" Crazed with panic, she grabbed her grandmother by the shoulder and shook. After a moment, the old woman lifted her arms and battered Kainé away. "Stop that, just stop," she cried, breathing heavily. "It ain't like I'm dying. I just tired from the trip, that's all." Kainé desperately wanted to believe her, but one look at the old woman's shaking hands and worn face told her more than words could ever. Her grandmother had lived long and hard, and it seemed to be that the bill was finally coming due. The time when her grandmother watched over Kainé was ending, sooner than either of them had feared. The position would be revisited. The next morning, Kainé came to the side of her grandmother's bed and took her wrinkled hand. "Grandma, you're sick. You need medicine. I'm going to go to the village." The old woman shook her head and tried to rise, but Kainé pushed her down. "It's all right," she said. "I'll be fine." Her grandmother fixed her with a gaze that could melt steel. After what seemed like an eternity, she finally lowered her eyes and sighed. "Well, I don't like it, goddammit, but I guess I should quit being so stubborn and let you grow up." The old woman watched as Kainé strapped on her boots and made her way down the road to the village. Hours later, as an unseen sun made its way across the dark and rainy sky, she was still watching. Kainé moved at a brisk pace, checking her pockets every few minutes to make sure the money her grandmother gave her was still there. Every noise caused her to spin on her heel, making sure that she wasn't being stalked by a shade or worse demon in his But she encountered neither tormentors or shades. And Kainé finally found herself at the entrance of the village. A few adults she could see glanced sideways at her and muttered to each other behind raised hands before slinking away into the shadows. Her heart was racing. Kainé took a series of rapid, shallow breaths and tried to calm herself. I have to prove myself. I have to help Grandma. I have to be strong. She chanted these words to herself over and over as she made her way, as she slowly made her way. Finally, her eyes settled on a rotund old woman who was angrily waving her arms in the air and telling anyone who would listen exactly what she thought of Kainé's presence. "Hey lady," said Kainé, with a bravado she didn't feel. "Where's the apothecary?" The old woman's flabby cheeks shook in bewildered anger. "How dare this thing speak to me?" they seemed to say, but Kainé saw her eyes held a different emotion, fear. "Yeah, we're both scared, lady, trust me on that one." "Which way?" Kainé repeated. The old woman pointed to a small building to the right of her, before hitching up her dress and stumbling off in the other direction. Kainé cringed, expecting a stone to come flying from the assembled crowd, but none came. Her mind was filled with a strange sense of pride as she made her way to the apothecary, but a new emotion had little time to take root, for as soon as she opened the door she noticed a familiar customer at the counter. It was Dino. He had clearly been sent on some kind of family errand, because his gang of followers was nowhere to be found. "Oh my god," he spluttered. "Oh, what are you doing here, freak?" The insult was delivered without force, and Kainé happily ignored it. Stretched on tiptoes to see over the counter, she asked the shopkeeper for medicine. "Ha!" barked Dino. "The old bitch finally keel over? Go to hell, Dino." The boy's eyes grew wide. They seemed ready to fall out of his head, but before he could let fire come back, or worse, a punch, the apothecary told him to knock it off before he kicked them out of the store. Deimos looked out of the shop, cursing Kainé under his breath. Once he was gone, she allowed herself to breathe once more, taking a brief tour of the shop while the owner prepared the medicine. Countless tiny bottles filled the cramped store, each one labelled in some incomprehensible language. An ocean of aromas salted her nose, creating a sense that was exotic but not all unpleasant. Seeing such a variety of supplies gave Kainé a sense of peace. Surely in the world so vast there would be a place that she could call home. On the far wall behind the counter there was a portrait of a stunning young girl. The picture had once contained bright and vibrant colours, but time had worked its cruel magic, and it began to fade. The beauty of the work, however, remained undiminished. "You like the picture?" Kainé turned to the apothecary with a small vial of medicine in his hand. His eyes were gentle but sad, and they seemed to stare through her at nothing as she spoke. "That's my daughter. I sketched her when she was just a little girl. She's been dead a long time now." Kainé didn't know how to respond. She just stared at the portrait and tried to come up with the right words. "Pictures are wonderful things," continued the shopkeeper. "They let the ones closest to us live on forever." She shook her head slightly, then looked down at Kainé and smiled. Handing her the medicine, he reached into a sizable green apron and produced a handful of old wax crayons. "You should have these. There's no one left that I wish to draw." Kainé took an instinctive step back, causing the shopkeeper's face to darken. "Yes, I've heard the rumours about you," he said. "It's a small village, and word travels quick. Between you and me, I'm not sure which of them to believe, but also I don't think that matters much. I know your grandmother, Callie, and I think the way she was driven out of this town is just deplorable." "Grandmother's name is Callie?" thought Kainé suddenly. She was still mulling the new fact over in her mind when she reached out and gently took the crayons from the apothecary's hand. "Your grandmother is an old friend of mine," he said, as Kainé scooted away yet again. "I owe her much. I wager she would like it if you drew a picture of her." "Yes, I think she would like that very much." Kainé muttered a quiet agreement but inside her heart was bursting. Never before had a villager treated her with anything but complete contempt. It was a tiny, almost incomprehensible step, but a step nevertheless, and that was and with enough tiny steps she might one day discover the rest of the world. When Kainé returned home, she found her grandmother asleep in her bed. Her feet were blackened and raw, even bleeding a bit in places. Lynn Kainé believed that she had been pacing around the room until exhaustion finally caught up to her. She placed the medicine by her grandmother's pillow and turned to leave, but found the old woman's hand collapsing around her arm. "Back already, are you?" asked the grandmother with a yawn. "Come here and let me look at you." Grandmother sat up and examined Kainé head to toe. Finally satisfied nothing trouble had befallen her grandchild, she leaned back and allowed herself to relax. "Well, how was it? Those bastards give you any trouble?" "It was kind of fun," said Kainé with a small smile. "No, seriously, it was." "Fun, eh?" asked her grandmother in a voice which implied she didn't believe anything but. So any time you need me to run an errand, just let me know." As she spoke, Kainé removed the crayons from her pocket. After a brief explanation of the source, she informed her grandmother that she was going to sketch her portrait. "A portrait of me? Ridiculous, no one wants to stare at a wrinkled old crone." "But grandma, it'll make you live forever." "Horse shit," said her grandmother, throwing the sheets from her bed. "Living forever would just piss me off. Now put those crayons away and help me with dinner." But Kainé wouldn't relent, and in the end grandmother found herself leaning against the wall of the house, as if posing for a master artist. Kainé took up the crayons and eyed up her subject carefully, and set to work. Just as her grandmother was beginning to nod off, Kainé finished the piece. After staring at it for a bit, she released it from her grasp and let it slowly drift to the floor. "It's terrible. It doesn't look like you at all." "I'm sorry, Grandma. I thought the crayons would, make drawing easy or something." The woman's eyes narrowed at her granddaughter's disappointment. "Let me be the judge of that," she said. Ignoring the pain in her back, she reached for the paper. The sketch could have been a person's face, it could have been a boulder, it could have been a lump of clay, or an indescribable misshapen loaf of bread, all rendered in chaotic array of colours. The old woman stared at the picture for a long time, then slowly wheezed out a laugh. "Oh, Kainé," she said, between laughs, "you truly are my blood. You're clumsy as me and I love it. But, hush, I won't hear any more bull about how ugly you think it is. It came from the heart, and I'll treasure it always." True to her word, the old woman gave the picture a place of honour in the kitchen, above the kitchen table. In the days that followed, Kainé would often catch her staring at the portrait with a smile on her face, an action she interpreted as silent, mocking laughter. A week later, Kainé couldn't stand it any longer and asked her grandmother to remove the artwork. "Posh," said the old woman. "I'll take it down when they roll me over in my shroud." She pondered this for a bit and turned to Kainé and dropped to one knee. "Listen to me, girl. Seeing this picture makes me happy in a way I've never felt before. And it makes me want to go on, so that someday you might feel the same happiness." It was at that moment that burned itself into Kainé's memory, a perfect blend of pride, love and joy that came together to form a lifelong resemblance. She swore to never forget this moment, to never forget the old woman who had made her place in the world possible. Time moves on, people and memories move on, in and out of life, like ghosts passing through a hall, but this moment will be different. Kainé swore, because I will remember it forever, forever. Kainé's dream, suspicion. Separation, I mean. Kainé listened to the sound of the crackling firewood and stared at the black object on her plate. She'd been pushing around the wooden disc for 10 minutes, ignoring the bemused stare of her grandmother. Finally, she summoned the courage and gave the object a brief sniff. A sharp, bitter scent flew up her nostril and made its home there, causing her face to twist with disgust. "Grandma, I can't believe you want me to eat a bug." The old woman threw some more wood under the fire, into the cooking pot, and snorted. "It's not a bug, you foolish girl, it's a berry." "Why the hell would I be feeding you bugs?" "Yeah, well, it looks like a bug," said Kainé, "and I think it's burnt or something because it smells terrible." With that, Kainé held her nose and threw the berry into her mouth, chewing it as little as possible. "Oh yeah, that's terrible, alright? Why, you little brat," laughed the old woman. "Look at the sass on you. You've been spending too much time with me, and that's a fact." 5 years had passed since the moment when Kainé's grandmother had saved her from the bullies. As is often the way of two stubborn children, their relationship had grown in fits and starts, but moved forward all the same. Meals that used to be sober affairs were now filled with laughter and hurled abuse in equal measure. Kainé could not remember a time when she had been happier. As the years went on, Kainé started to shoulder more and more of the daily responsibilities. Her grandmother's legs were weaker by the day, and she could no longer do many of the chores she used to take for granted. And soon this morning, Kainé found lacing up her work boots with the breakfast of burnt berries rolling in her belly. "Where are you going today?" asked Grandma suddenly. Kainé looked up, surprised. The old woman rarely asked specifics anymore. "Well, I'm going to check the calm trees and see if they're ripe. I thought we could make some jam or something. Oh, and I'm going to pick up some flagstones, so I'll need to take the wheelbarrow." "Flagstones? What the hell for?" Kainé stared at her grandmother and held her arms out and swept around the home, constructed mostly of cloth, rope and rubble. The old pieces sagged like a boxer in its final rounds. "Grandmother, a dying cat could chew through this house. I'm going to build a stone wall so we have some protection." The old woman laughed, exposing her toothless grin to the world. "God damn it, well, if a bunch of thieves want to run like this place, let them come. We've got nothing worth stealing anywhere." "I'm not worried about thieves, I'm worried about shades. People saw one on the west of the village yesterday." The old woman tilted her head and stared at her granddaughter. "Well, shoot, I don't know why you have to do it today. We could worry about it some other..." "Grandmother, no. If I don't go to the country, we won't eat tonight. You know that." A confused expression passed over the old woman's face, and for a moment she was a small child lost in a carnival. "Yes," she said after a bit. "Yes, of course, that's right. I'm sorry, Kainé. Lately, my mind's... it's..." She didn't finish the thought, instead walking over to the nightstand and shaking the wreath of lunar tears from the drawer. The flower's petals had aged to a brilliant whiteness, and Kainé thought it was more beautiful than the day she'd first received it. "You're going to be a true woman soon," Grandmother said, as she placed the flower on the girl's head. "Soon that means less chattering about shades and building defensive walls and more talking about how beautiful you've become." Annoyed, Kainé reached up to remove the garland, but the look on her grandmother's face stopped her hand. "You're a beautiful thing," said the old woman, "and there ain't anyone like you in the world. I'm very proud of you." "Okay, Grandmother, that's enough compliments for one day." "Such a mouth on you, where'd that come from?" "Gee, I wonder." "I'll teach you to sass me, girl," yelled Grandma. She lurched forward and grabbing Kainé by the ear and pulling her around the room with a crazed grin on her face. "Grandma!" yelled Kainé in a quaking voice. "Grandma, stop it! What the hell?" The old woman stared at her and blinked and slowly held her wrinkled hands out as if it was the first time she'd ever seen them. Oh, I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry, girl. Sometimes my mind just..." Kainé thought the look on the grandmother's face was the most heartbreaking thing she'd ever seen. "Listen," she began. "Maybe I could stay home after all. Nah, I wouldn't want you to have to keep an eye on an old codger like me. You go, you get your fruit and your wall and whatnot. I'll be fine. And when you come back, I'll have a nice grasshopper dinner waiting for you." Kainé rolled her eye and kissed her grandmother on the forehead and made ready to depart, trying desperately to ignore the worry that was gnawing the walls of her heart. Kainé could feel the old woman's eyes watching her as she moved down the path. Don't turn around, she told herself, but at the end the temptation was too great. She spun on her heels and looked and saw a small bent woman standing in front of her, riding shackled hook, with a sad expression on her face. God, she looked so old. It's like the wind could reach out and carry her away. Kainé worried about her grandmother all day, causing her work to suffer. All the fruit she did collect was tossed carelessly into the wheelbarrow, and she only found a couple of stones before losing interest in the project. Finally, as dusk approached, she decided to call it a day. Cursing herself for her lack of focus, Kainé pushed the nearly empty wheelbarrow back down the path. As she crested the hill, she suddenly froze. The wheelbarrow fell from her finger and collapsed to the side, sending pieces of wrinkled brown fruit rolling down the hill. Her gaze was transfixed. Thick black clouds were hovering above just ahead, tracing the path with a finger. Kainé suddenly felt her stomach knot into itself. Oh no, oh gods no. Her grandmother's house was ablaze. The flames were licking up at it, trying to touch the sky itself. Grandma! Grandma! Kainé ran as fast as she ever had in her life. Once she tripped on a stone and went on sprawling on the ground, but she leapt to her feet and continued running, unmindful of the blood that was spilling from her wounded hands and knees. As she got closer and closer, Kainé's mind began to race in time with the footfalls. It's too dark, not just fire. Can't be fire, too much smoke. Gotta save her. She burst through the front yard and came to a sudden halt. Her worst suspicions were confirmed. The smoke from the fire was mingling with the thick black inky darkness of an enormous shade. The massive creature supported itself on 3 twisted feet and achieved balance through means of a large armoured tail. Scaled horns and large claws sprouted from its body in random chaotic patterns, giving its appearance of a lizard designed by some insane god. Seeing Kainé, it let out a roar and flicked its tail, sending a small whirlwind spinning around the yard. For a moment the creature retreated into the shimmer of the inky darkness, as if her mind was unable to comprehend such a thing actually existing, but the smell hit her, a blend of rotten meat and excrement. The horror became a real one once more. The creature bellowed again. This time Kainé responded with a scream of her own. "Alright, you bastard," she said, though as she echoed through the high cliffs. "It's you or me, let's go!" The shade eyed Kainé with bewildered interest. Then it began to look from her to the house and back again, as if urging her to look at the destruction it had so gleefully wrought. With dread building in her heart, Kainé glanced to her house. Through the smoke and flame she spotted a small figure struggling to escape the ruins. "Grandma!" At the sound of her voice, the old woman began to wave frantically. "She's alive," thought Kainé, "alive." Her legs sprang to life, and she raced across the yard towards the flaming wreck of her house. Before she could advance more than a few steps, the shade opened its mouth and let out a powerful roar, enough to uproot trees and send them flying. The blast sent Kainé tumbling through the air, before smashing against the rocky earth. Stars danced before her eyes as she tried to remember how her legs worked. Get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, get up, now. As Kainé struggled to her feet, the shade stomped towards the house and pinned her grandmother to the ground with a tip of a claw. Grandmother struggled to move, the claw in her stomach, but she might as well have been trying to push away a mountain. She coughed briefly, standing a small spout of blood into the air, then collapsed to the ground, her energy spent. Kainé lurched to her feet, only to fall back to the earth with a gasp. Her ankles were on fire. One or both of them were surely broken. Ignoring the plane, she scrambled through that screamed through her body. She began to drag herself across the ground, leaving a drunken trail of dust and blood in her wake. "Grandma! Hold on! Just a little longer!" Her grandmother's face was turning blue, her eyes rolled back. Only the whites were exposed. Kainé pushed herself across the ground with maddening slowness, the distance seeming to increase with every second passing. The shade glanced between the two women and flicked its tongue, its giant mouth turning up at the corners. Short panting breaths belched from somewhere deep in its core. Bastards laughing at us. She had no idea how such a mindless creature could experience emotion, but she could no longer doubt that the shade was taking joy in their suffering. "Yeah, I see your plan." The shade moved its claws slightly, allowing Grandma to breathe again. It was clearly keeping her alive, only to snuff her out when Kainé was close enough to touch her. "I'm gonna kill this bastard!" Summoning all her strength, Kainé rose to her feet. There was a sickening snap from her right ankle as her foot twisted backwards, but she forced it out of her mind and began hobbling towards the monster. Pulling a small knife from her pouch in her waist, she leapt on the foot and pinned her grandmother to the floor and plunged the weapon deep. "Give her back!" she screamed. "Give her back to me!" It was like stabbing a rock. After a few swipes, the knife broke and at the hilt with a dull snap. The shade panted a laugh again and raised its tail and sent it rushing through the air towards the young girl that was latched to its foot. Kainé had never had a chance. The tail struck her square in the chest and sent her crashing through the burning wreck of the home. As she lay on the ground with blood pooling from multiple wounds, a small, weak voice spoke up. "Kainé?" Kainé's vision blurred, but focused. She forced herself to focus on the sound. Finally, her eyes cleared enough for her to make out her grandmother's hand reaching out through the smoke. Grandma! Kainé, you gotta run! You can't beat this one! She grabbed her hand and held on with all her strength. Grandma, come on, we have to go! The old woman coughed loudly. One of her hands, slick with blood, slipped from Kainé's grip and thumped to the ground below. Grandma, no! I said run, goddammit! You have to live! You have to get through! The thought would forever stay unfinished. Before she could say another word, the shade's claw descended, smashing through the remnants of the roof, and down upon the shattered figure of the old woman. Blood oozed from the gaps in the creature's toes, as the trembling, putrid smell assaulted Kainé's nose once again. She stared at the foot, dumbfounded, convinced that she could not possibly be real. When the creature finally lifted its appendage, all that remained underneath was a twisted, unrecognizable mass of red rubble. Her grandmother was gone. Kainé blinked, trying to feel the hands which had been in hers a moment before. For a fleeting instant she could remember the warmth of the embrace trembling in the finger, but then the sensation drifted away on the breeze and was gone. Memories flashed through Kainé's mind, one after another, faster and faster, until they became a meaningless angle of noise. Kainé screamed, then a thunderous sound that echoed through the cliffs and seemed to roll away forever. The shade eased forward, black ichor pouring from its mouth and dissolving into smoke on the ground below. The earth shook with every step the creature took towards its prey. Kainé's body slowly rose, as if controlled by a mad puppeteer. Her arms and legs bent in impossible angles. Her head lolled dangerously to the side, yet somehow she managed to stand. Stirring the shade, her eyes began to glow at deep red fire. The creature was so confident just a moment before it took a slow, hesitant step back, trying to discern whether this broken human could possibly be a threat. Kainé seized the moment, laughing like a madwoman, leapt through the air and plunged the shattered hilt of the knife into the leg of the shade. The shade shook Kainé off like a fly, sending her crashing to the earth once again. Her chest rose and fell slowly, as if a great weight were resting on it. Moist sounds of echo pain through her mind. Something warm and thick oozed from her ears. Is that blood? I think it is. I think I'm bleeding to death. Oh, no. Can't die. Grandma told me to live. Deep inside Kainé's mind, something finally broke. The sound and pain, the smoke, the flame, all faded away, until all that remained was a single incarnation repeated over and over again. Kill it, 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 kill it now. As the spark that was Kainé slowly began to flicker and die, she felt her desire to kill and desire to live blend into one. The distance between the heartbeats grew longer and longer and longer. It was distance, not distinction. Alright, a small break.
The beast approaches.
Oh, I know.
It's coming right for us!
What anger this creature must have. How did it even survive these past 5 years?
I'm not gonna let this happen again. It dies today.
My sword fits lighter. It's not the blade, but the skill of the user. Strike it down.
Can't even hit the weak spot. Hopefully the last time this thing dies. Sleeping Kainé continues to sleep even though she's been sleeping for 5 years. Kainé's dream encounter. Gently, weakly, softly. The shade surely that its tormentor was dead, turned and stomped away from the hide and stopping along the way only for a one final lure. Couldn't kill it. Shame began to I can't read it. Kainé tried to turn her head to the side, but suddenly succeeded to cough up a gout of blood. It's getting difficult to see, and only after a moment of fierce contemplation did she finally realise her left eye was gone. Laughing to herself, she turned her remaining eye to the ruins of her home and noticed a ragged stump of an arm resting a few feet away. Yep, that's mine, she thought with a mad giggle. This is going to make clapping a real bitch. Haha, cried a sudden voice from the depths of her mind. Finally gonna die, are you? Well, you had it coming. Go to hell, Dino, she thought at the unseen assailant. Go to hell before I pluck out your eyes and feed them to a dog. The voice of her childhood terror evaporated into smoke, only to be replaced with another one, a recent voice. Hold still, said the apothecary, materializing from the ruin like a ghost. I want to draw you so that you can live forever. No, stop. I don't want to live forever. I want to die right here. I see, he said quietly. Well, if that's what you want. The spectral copter fluttered away out of existence for a moment, and then proceeded to draw a piece of paper and sketch quickly. After a few seconds, he turned the page to Kainé and smiled. Since you rejected my offer, I drew someone else. It was a picture of her grandmother, as real as life. Kainé opened her mouth and thanked the man, but stopped as the picture began to blacken in the middle. Before she could say anything, a dozen multi-legged insects began to swarm across the page, tearing it at with the sharp pincers. Stop! No! Don't hurt the picture! Kainé reached out her remaining arm and waved it flaily through the air. To her surprise, the insects fell off the picture and to the ground below, where they vanished into tiny black tendrils of smoke. Relieved, Kainé turned her eye back to the picture, only for her mouth to open in a silent scream. The sketch now showed the grandmother as she truly was, a smashed, unrecognizable lump of nothing. The apothecary smiled, then broke into a joyous laugh. Dance. See that? He cried, as he danced his jig. It's perfect now. She looks just like you. I look like that? Oh god, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Drowning in despair, Kainé laid her head back in the mud and smoke of the ruins of the house and waited for the end to come. But just before she let everything go, an unfamiliar voice began to whisper in her ear. Ain't you got a wish, sunshine? The voice was vulgar and fierce at the same time, as if insanity had somehow found a way to take form. It does sound like insanity. Kainé wanted to scream as the voice crawled underneath her skin, but her lungs refused to work. You know, a wish like a prayer or something? Why don't you get on your knees and start praying to the heavens? Please, invisible man in the sky, save me, save me. Kainé finally resorted to shouting at the voice with her mind. I don't make wishes, they don't come true for me. I'm a curse, a freak. I should be left to die. The other voice boomed in her ears. Oh god, you're the best. Kainé glanced down and saw a black shiny substance oozing from her leg. She tried to brush it away, but the remains of her arms no longer seemed to respond. The substance slowly crept towards her feet and began to move towards the rest of her body. Is this death? Is this what death feels like? Or is my mind just losing itself? She could feel the slime oozing its way upwards, feeling a hot, searing pain left in its wake. Whatever else might happen, she was still alive, and this was real. Come on, said the voice, let it go. Kainé tried to ignore the voice and concentrate on the pain, but the newcomer would have none of it. Don't ignore me, sunshine. You ready to give up? ready to die, so why not let me have it? Have what? Your body, come on, give it to me, give me. I want to stand on the ground, feel the rain, taste the wind. The voice paused as it licked its lips. When it resumed, it was filled with a mad, unbidden joy. I want to take your hands and use them to choke a goddamn life out of people. I want to tear out their throats and bathe in the blood just like before. In response, Kainé shifted her head and vomited. The warmth that crept down her front and mingled with the pain that was of the encroaching black ooze. Are you a shade? Maybe. What of it? The slime reached her face and crept into her nose and slowly oozed into the socket of her missing eye. The moment it touched her brain, Kainé was struck by the most powerful sensation she'd ever felt. It was ecstasy. She wanted to scream with delight, but all she could manage was a small whimpered moan. Feels good, doesn't it? Asked the voice with a chuckle. Yeah. What can I say? I know how to please the ladies. Now give me that body. Come on, give me that body. I'll give you more of this feeling. It's a fair trade. A black lump began to protrude from Kainé's side as she watched it grow and become thicker, eventually taking the form of her missing arm. I can see better, she thought. My eye must have grown back too. The slime reached up to envelop her face, but she managed to brush it away. Stop, she whispered, marvelling at how she managed to regain her voice. Stop. The black ooze hesitated as it considered this request, then quickly stammered down her body before disappearing in a cloud of smoke. Oh, what the hell, Sunshine? Screamed the voice. We had a deal. I thought you wanted to die. Grandma said I can't die yet. A brief image of her grandmother, bloody and broken, flashed before her eyes. She saw the shade that had killed her, and heard its mocking laughter, then closed her eyes and forced the image out of her mind. Her whole body was quaking with rage. When she opened her eyes again, they burned red. That thing took my grandma, and I'm going to kill it before I die. Kainé glanced down and saw the mysterious pattern, the pattern of the shades burning itself onto her left arm. Well, I be darned, said the voice cheerfully. Look at that, Sunshine. I think you and me are going to be good friends now. Kainé stared incredulity at the arm. More emotion than she felt before, more letters than seemed ready to punch her into the skin, and began to infect the rest of her body. The arm clearly had a will of its own now. Stop. Gotta stop. Holding her left arm in her right, Kainé took a deep breath and tried to calm herself. Come on, don't fight it, pleaded the voice. Hate's my favourite dish, and I'm hungry. Let go. Feel the anger. Burn with the fire of revenge. First for blood, then go out and... Shut up, and get the hell out of my body! Your body? Oh, that's rich, Sunside. Real rich. Look, why don't you just get up and die so I can have this body all to myself? What do you say? I bet those buddies of yours in the area would love to see you dead. Kainé gripped a nearby shard of glass and tried to saw off the shade-infected portion of her side. Before she could, her dark left arm grabbed her right wrist, crushing it. Kainé screamed and dropped the shard as the sound of bone crushing on bone filled the air. Stupid idiot, you're possessed now, Sunshine, and you ain't going back. The voice laughed again, a loud, long wail that seemed to go on without end. Possessed, whimpered Kainé. Yeah, possessed. You and me, we got what you might call a timeshare agreement. Remember how the folks used to think you were a freak? Well, wait till I see a load of you now. Kainé looked up, tears in her eyes. The sky seemed smaller somehow, darker. Is this because that shade? Is this how they see the world? So, listen, purred the voice. I know this whole profession seems some, but it ain't all bad. It's plenty in it for you too. I'm a very powerful creature, Sunshine, and now that this power belongs to you. You got enemies? People you want to kill? I can make that happen. The little fat kid who kicks on you? That big old shade that squashed your granny? We'll wrap them up in their own assholes. No more abusing for you, Sunshine. No more pain. Wait, said Kainé. You're a shade. Why would you want me to kill another shade? What, you think I'm some kind of racist? Some killing snob? I don't care, god damn it. You murder Honeypants? Who you murder, Honeypants? I just want to drink from the well. Kainé considered this as she struggled to her feet, the power of the shade coursing through her. The smoke from her house was drifting away in the wind, and she enjoyed the way the cool evening breeze felt on her left arm. After a long pause, the voice spoke up again. So, how about it? You and me? We could have a good time together. Look, I'll even take care of that bloody part if you don't want it. Fuck off, asshole, muttered Kainé. I'll handle the killing. Screamed the voice. Look at you, oh sunshine, we're gonna have so much fun. So listen, my name's Tyron, and if you ever need me, I'll just be hanging in this little piece of meat you call a heart. Now get to it. There be more killing, and there more the heart rots and sours, and I like it rotten and sour. Kainé found herself nodding at the balls. Yeah, she said. Yeah, I think this can work. I'm gonna find that shade, and I'm going to strangle it with its own guts. And when I'm done with it, I'm going to do the same to you, Tyron. Count on it. Hehehe, I've shit bigger than you. Good luck with that. Oh, and hey, one more thing. Right now, you and me are sharing this body, but if you ever run out of hate, if you ever, you know, get soft, then I'm gonna take over everything. So keep killing, sunshine, and watch your back. The voice grew fainter and gradually faded away, fading to somewhere deep inside Kainé herself. Kainé waited until she was sure the voice was gone and waved her left arm around a few times. It felt perfectly normal, she thought. It feels like mine. Desperately, she poked around, and prodded the newling, determined to find something wrong with it. She didn't want to feel normal. It would mean that the creature inside her had already won. I'm not a shade, I'm Kainé. Repeating this mantra in her mind, she slowly began to dig through the rubble of the house, careful to ignore a certain red stain in the corner. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity of heartbreaking work, she found what she was looking for. It was the Reef of Lunar Tears. Though it had been through hell and back, the garlands of pearl were bright as ever. Kainé stared at the piece, and put it in her hair, and lowered the wreath, and stared at it. I'm sorry, Grandma, I'm so sorry, but I don't deserve to wear this anymore. I'm possessed, corrupted, a freak. And this time, I don't think there's any going back. Holding the flowers to her heart, Kainé fell to the ground and sobbed. As the night gradually lightened and dawned, and the people of Eri arose to the new day's light, she remained in that position, as if the tears could somehow wash away the horrors that infected the world. Awake, 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 it's alive.
Stay alive. Stay alive.
Grandma.
Kainé, you gotta live. You gotta come back to us.
Oh, hey. Emil, you were the one calling me, weren't you?
You still recognize me?
Of course. I knew you right away.
Thank you, Kainé.
Welcome back, Kainé.
Wow, you grew up. So, how long has it been?
5 years.
Shit. That's a long time.
Yes, it is.
Any luck with Yona?
We are still no closer to finding her. We need a way to locate the Shadow Lord.
By the way, this is for you.
Oh wait, I forgot it actually took a while.